Hi, in this session we will continue our discussion on Governor Generals. So we started off with Warren Hastings, okay, from 1773 to 1785. We have discussed about Regulating Act of 1773. Then we have discussed about Pitt's India Act of 1784. So I hope you have a very clear idea about these two, right? So if you want to have a quick recap of 1773 Regulating Act, 2 points that we have discussed is the first Executive Council, right? That is Governor General of Bengal plus 4 members. So Governor of Bengal became Governor General of Bengal. That's why this is more important. Now Governor General of Bengal plus 4 council members, and the decisions are taken on the basis of majority. And we have seen the Governor General is appointed by the company and the 4 members were appointed by the Parliament, and the first Governor General was Lord Warren Hastings, and the 4 members were Richard Barwell, Philip Francis, George Monson and John Clavering, right? So these are the 4 members, and together they constitute the Executive Council with 5 members, and 3 out of 5 was the majority which was required. And there was always a problem with 3 gentlemen out of this 4 for Warren Hastings, and he could not implement any of his decision. And as a solution to that, you can see 1784 Pitt's India Act came, and we have seen how the problem was solved through 1784 Pitt's India Act. Second provision that we have seen in 1773 Regulating Act was a Supreme Court has to be established, and we have seen that the Supreme Court is not at all comparable with the modern Supreme Court. This Supreme Court was established only for the trial of Europeans, and we have seen the Supreme Court was established in 1774 at Calcutta, and the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court was Justice Elijah Impey. Okay, now when you come to 1784 Pitt's India Act, the Executive Council was reduced to 4. That means Governor General of Bengal plus 4 members, now reduced to 3 members. So total it is 4. Decisions are still taken on the basis of majority, but if there is a possibility of tie, if there is an equality, the Governor General will have a veto power. So the Governor General now need the support of at least one person to implement any of his decision. So if you get the support of one person, there will be an equality. Then Governor General will have the final say. And the second point that we have seen is a board of control in England was established with 6 members to control or regulate the affairs of East India Company in India. And the third provision that we have seen is a provision of recall, right? The British Parliament can recall any of its official, including the Governor General, and that's a key point here. See, they can recall any of its officials because those officials, these 3 members, were appointed by the Parliament only, but the Governor General is appointed by the company. But still, if the Parliament is not satisfied with the Governor General of Bengal, they can even call back that person also. Okay, so I hope this is clear for all of you, and we have discussed other important aspects of Lord Warren Hastings. So in this session, we are going to look at Lord Cornwallis. Very important Governor General. Okay, Lord Cornwallis. So he was the second Governor General after Warren Hastings. So Lord Cornwallis from 1786 to 1793. Now he was previously, if you might have heard this name when you study world history also. Very important name when you study world history, because see, in the American War of Independence during 1776 to 1781, he was the person who was leading the battle from English side against George Washington. And he was a failure. Obviously, America won the independence. So the person who was a failure in America, when he came to India, he have a big success story to write. So obviously, the most important question, mains question or prelims question you will expect from Lord Cornwallis is the reforms introduced by Lord Cornwallis. So if you get a general question on the reforms introduced by Lord Cornwallis, you will have to talk about civil service reform. You will have to talk about police reform. You will have to talk about judicial reform, and judicial reform is also known as Cornwallis Code. Okay, so this in itself is a question, separate question. You can get question on judicial reforms introduced by Lord Cornwallis. Okay, so it's like rule of law, equality before law, etc. These concepts were actually introduced by British, and to be particular, Lord Cornwallis time, and we are now also continuing the same, and that's the most important pillar of our constitution: equality before law and rule of law. Right? And this is also known as Cornwallis Code. Then again, we have seen Lord Warren Hastings, he was a failure when it comes to land revenue settlement, and we have seen the quinquennial settlement, 1-year settlement, 5-year settlement, etc. And that problem related to revenue settlement is going to be solved here through a permanent settlement. Okay, so here we need to see a permanent settlement, that is from the revenue side. Okay, or you can also call it as zamindari settlement. Okay, so these are the 4 points that we need to discuss in detail when it comes to Lord Cornwallis. So you can get prelims question from any of these 4, and you can expect a mains question from all of them put together, like this reforms introduced by Cornwallis, or you can get a mains question separately from judicial reform or Cornwallis Code. You can also get a separate question on land revenue settlement during British time. In that, the first and the most important one that you need to write is permanent settlement. Obviously, there are settlements after this like Mahalwari settlement and Riyotwari settlement. So we will be discussing about that also if possible in this session itself. But the point is this. So let me start off with civil service reform. Okay, so let me start off with civil service reform. So he started civil services, introduced civil services in the year 1793. Now if you look at his time period 86 to 1793. Okay, so that's his last year, although he is coming back to India after some year and for few months, but still this is the end of his tenure, right? And all the reforms are actually happening in this year. Police reform, civil service reform, permanent settlement, everything is in 1793. Okay, so civil services were introduced in 1793. So, but this was not through any competitive exam or anything. Okay, and that you can see after 1833 Charter Act, and technically Indians started entering into civil services only after 1833 Charter Act, not here. So introduced in 1793, only after 40 years Indians could enter into civil services, because in Charter Act of 1833 there was a provision that no discrimination should be made in the recruitment of civil services on the basis of sex, color, creed, place of birth, etc. So because of that, technically Indians started entering into civil services from 1833 onwards. Obviously, the paper will be set in their favor and exam will be conducted in England, but still some Indians were managed to enter into civil services after 1833. But the point here is civil services were introduced in 1793. There was a question also from this in 2012 prelims, the father of civil services. So the father of civil service is Lord Cornwallis. Okay, he introduced civil services. Next is actually police reform. So he introduced police reform. So when you look at police reform, what all things that we need to see is, if you remember when we discussed about the revenue settlement during Warren Hastings time, I told you people were very desperate to get the zamindariship, right? Why? Because zamindars used to enjoy the power of policing. Okay, but now during this time in 1793 when he introduced police reform, police officials were appointed. That's the most important reform. Okay, police officials were appointed and police stations were established. Okay, these two were the most important reform that we need to look at here. So police officials and police stations. So if I tell you these are the only 2 points, then if you get questions from this, it can't be difficult. It should be very easy, right? But still, we can make a very difficult question with these 2 points itself. You know these points, but still I'll give you a question which you cannot answer, or you may be confused when it comes to prelims. Okay, and one more point is, this police station is headed by, present day it is sub inspector of police or inspector. So that time it was daroga. So same thing only in North India, even now also daroga it is called, right? So daroga. Now number of police stations will form a circle, and this is headed by superintendent of police, SP. Okay, so number of police stations will be headed by superintendent of police. Now, what the question I can make here? See, consider the following with respect to the police reforms introduced by Lord Cornwallis in the year 1793. Okay, consider the following. First statement is, police officials were appointed. Perfect. Okay. Second statement is, police stations were established on the basis of, let me add you one more point here so that you will be confused. On the basis of population. Okay. So on the basis of population. Now, if you see these 2 statements, now you need to pick which among the following is correct. Your answer option A will be statement 1 only, B will be 2 only, C will be 1 and 2, D will be not 1, not 2. So which one you will pick here? Police officials were appointed. Obviously, there is no doubt. So this is correct. Okay. Police stations were established. Okay. Some people will not look at this and they will directly mark 1 and 2. Some people will look at this. So then they start thinking logically. If you have not read about this, obviously police stations should be on the basis of population, right? More population, more police station required. Then also you will mark this. But what is the correct answer here? The correct answer is 1 and 1 only. The reason is police stations were established not on the basis of population, which is logic only, but it was on the basis of area. The point why I discuss like this is basically because now onwards you will not forget this point. Okay, so if you see police stations were established, it is on the basis of area. Nowadays it is based on population because more population, more police station, more police staff is required. But then it was on the basis of area. Don't make any confusion, don't make any mistake. Okay, third. Now let's look at the third reform, that is judicial reforms. Okay, so judicial reforms, and you can get questions from this point of view also. Cornwallis Code. Okay, so both are same. Cornwallis Code. So there are some changes in the structure and there are changes in the laws also. So we will look at both. So if you see at that time, the structure was, or the hierarchy of court was like this. The lowest was Munsif ki Adalat. Okay, Munsif ki Adalat. Munsif is an Arabic word, or in Arabic it means the man who gives justice. Okay, so Munsif ki Adalat. And above this you have Court of Registrar. Court of Registrar, and above this you have district courts, okay, and this is divided into two. You have Diwani courts, and you have circuit courts. Okay, you have Diwani courts and you have circuit courts. Now, Diwani courts are for civil cases. This is for civil cases. So you know what you mean by civil cases, right? Marriage, adoption, okay, divorce, etc. Property. These are the civil cases. So Diwani courts are for civil cases. Circuit courts are for criminal cases. Okay, so these are criminal courts. Now Lord Cornwallis established 4 Diwani courts. That can be a question in prelims. 4 Diwani courts were established at Dhaka, Patna, Calcutta and Murshidabad. Okay, so Dhaka, Patna, Calcutta and Murshidabad. You can get a prelims question from this also. Which among the following were the Diwani courts established by Lord Cornwallis? And you'll get options like 1, 2, 3, 4 like this. Okay, now instead of Patna, if I give you Bombay, okay, then answer options will be A, B, C, D. What will be the answer options? First options will be 1 and 2, okay, then 2 and 3, okay, then 1, 2, 3, then 1, 3, 4. Okay, so what will happen is most probably you will think that 1, 2, 3 is the answer. You may not think Murshidabad, there is no possibility. So you will eliminate 4 and you may pick this. Or you may pick Bombay, Calcutta are the 2 important cities, so you may pick this also. But the correct answer is 1, 3 and 4. Okay, this is the way they will make question. Now, you can see in 1833 there is a Charter Act. Okay, just before also we have discussed when we discussed about civil service reform. So in 1833 Charter Act, one point was the 4 Diwani courts which were established by Lord Cornwallis at Dhaka, Patna, Calcutta and Murshidabad were to be abolished and instead High Court to be set up. Okay, that was one of the provision, and later you can see High Court were established in Bombay, Madras and Calcutta. Okay, so here this is what you need to remember, 4 Diwani courts. Now if you look at circuit courts, these are criminal courts, these are not fixed courts, these were moving courts. Okay, now the High Court, the highest court for Diwani court is actually Sadar Diwani. Sadar is a Persian word, its meaning is actually head. So circuit court, the head is Sadar Nizamat. Okay, Sadar Nizamat. Okay, so Sadar Diwani and Sadar Nizamat. Now let's look at some of the changes that he introduced in law. See, some of the laws were highly biased. For example, if you take eyewitness law. Okay, so eyewitness law. See, if a judge is hearing a case and in front of him a rich and a poor is coming, okay, as eyewitness, he will listen to the word of the rich person. There is a bias, okay. Again, an upper caste and a lower caste is coming, the judge will listen to the word of upper caste. And a male and a female is coming, he will listen to the word of the male, okay. A Muslim and a Hindu is coming, he will hear the word of the Muslim. Okay, so there were a lot of prejudices. Okay, so what he did is he abolished everything. So he introduced most important point that we need to discuss is equality before law. Equality before law. So whether you are a male or a female or you are a kid or old person, everybody is equal in front of law. Okay, so now they made there is no difference between male and female. Earlier, see, ancient religious textbooks and all, you can see they malign female, right? So it was like one male, if you need to be equal with one male, two females should be there. So basically, if you need to overcome the male witness, you need to have the support of three female. That was the situation. But now one male is equal to one female. They introduced equality before law. The kid or the old person, everybody is equal in front of the law. Okay, so now you can see eyewitness concept is irrespective of caste, creed, religion, sex or anything. Okay, everybody is equal. Second important thing that they introduced is actually rule of law. Second important change that they introduced is rule of law. So basically no one is above law and everyone has to work within the law. That's the concept of rule of law. So nobody is above law, everybody have to work within the law. So no one should go out of the law. Even the Governor General also have to work within the law. Okay, so basically you have to work according to law, not beyond law. Whether you are a Governor General or you are Executive Council member or whoever you are, you have to work within the law. Okay, so rule of law and equality before law were the two important points that we need to discuss when you discuss about judicial reform. But even when we said that they introduced equality before law, it is among the Indians. See, Indian versus Indian, whether you are an upper caste or lower caste, if you are a female or a male, okay, they introduced equality. But if it is Indian versus English, okay, then this equality is not applicable at that time. Okay, so that is obvious and there is no point in discussing that too much. Right? Now, the next point that we need to discuss under Lord Cornwallis is permanent settlement. So what I'll do is, I will discuss about permanent settlement now under Lord Cornwallis. Then, all the revenue settlements together, I will discuss in a separate lecture. Permanent settlement, Mahalwari settlement and Ryotwari settlement. Okay? So here, I will confine my discussion to permanent settlement alone. Because it happened under Lord Cornwallis time, and since we are discussing about Lord Cornwallis, I confine my discussion on revenue settlement to permanent settlement only here. Okay, so permanent settlement, highly controversial and very significant. It was in 1793. It is also known as Zamindari settlement. Okay, it was introduced as a problem to the previous settlements that we have already seen during Warren Hastings time. Okay, now here, as its name tell you, it is permanently fixed. The revenue is permanently fixed on the basis of 1790. So land revenue would be fixed at the base rate of the year 1790. Okay, and 91, 92, 93, in all years you will be paying the same. Okay, so now onwards, see, 1793 onwards, 1794 you will pay the same amount, 1795 also you will pay the same amount even if the production is increased. So see, 1794 and 1795, if you see, most probably production will increase if there is no other unforeseen issues, right? And you will pay the same revenue only in both cases. So who should get the advantage? The cultivator should get the advantage. But here, neither the state nor the cultivator is getting the advantage in this settlement, and it is some other person who's going to get the advantage. We'll look at that. Okay, we'll see what are the problems with the settlement. Before that, we need to understand the settlement in much more detail. Okay, so the way you are paying taxes like this, so they have decided that they will collect the tax from the cultivator. That means the sharecropper or the subtenant who's taking or who's undertaking the cultivation. So the peasant will pay it to the zamindar and zamindar will pay it to the state. Okay, now if you look at this, and the zamindar is the owner of the land, okay, and this person is cultivating on his land. So ownership is given to zamindar. But if you look at this ownership is not absolute. It is between peasant and zamindar, zamindar is the owner. If it is between zamindar and state, state is the owner. And because of this, you can see, if the peasant is not able to pay the tax to the zamindar, this peasant will be evicted and a new peasant may be coming in. Similarly, if the zamindar is not able to pay the tax before the sunset of the fixed time, the state will evict the zamindar and another zamindar will come. And this was introduced through a new law which is known as Sunset Law. Sunset Law 1794. In 1794, they introduced this law. See, if you see the quinquennial settlement or the previous 5-year settlement and all during Warren Hastings time, there was no such provision like this, and that's what the problem. because during the time of bidding they quote the maximum amount. That was the problem, but the government cannot evict them. That was the second problem till the contract, right? Here the government is fixing the amount. Okay, so that problem is more or less solved, but still there are issues. We'll look at those issues now. Okay, so this was the situation. The ownership was given to the zamindar, but remember, this was not absolute ownership. That's again relative. When it comes to peasant and zamindar, zamindar is the owner. When it comes to zamindar and the state, state is the owner, and state can evict the zamindar. Similarly, the zamindar can evict the peasant. Okay, now since the amount is fixed, okay, so the tax is fixed, what the zamindar will get out of this? See, if you collect 100 rupees, okay, let me put it as 100%. 9% is for zamindar and 91% is for the state. So this is the way you are dividing. So if you collect 100 rupees, 9 rupees what zamindar will get as the commission. Or it was like this, 10 out of 11 for state and 1 out of 11 for zamindar. So this was the situation. So the zamindar is basically working for this 9%. But whether we will be satisfied this 9% or not, we'll look at when it comes to the consequences. Okay. Now, who introduced this? It was introduced by Lord Cornwallis and his deputy John Shore, and he is going to be the next Governor General. Okay. So Lord Cornwallis and John Shore. So these were the two people who introduced this settlement. Where it was introduced, that's the most important point. It was introduced in Bengal, Bihar, Orissa. So if you look at this, he was the Governor General of Bengal. So obviously in that area only, Bengal, Bihar, Orissa, and some parts of Tamil Nadu and Benares also. But predominantly in eastern part of India. Just look at this eastern part of India. Okay, so permanent settlement, eastern part of India, Bengal, Bihar, Orissa. Some parts of Tamil Nadu and Benares is also there. But this is a point that you need to remember. Okay, so it is easy to remember because it was Cornwallis. He was the Governor General of Bengal, so near to Bengal, that area. Bengal comprised of Bengal, Bihar, Orissa. Okay, so how much area it was introduced? It comprised of around 19% of British India. Okay, so this settlement was around 19% of British India. So these are the points that you need to remember. So the condition was like this. Peasant will pay to zamindar, zamindar will pay to the state. It is called as permanent settlement. Why? Because the revenue is fixed on the basis of 1790. Okay, it is also called as zamindari settlement. Okay, now what the zamindar will get? 1 out of 11 or 9%. State will get 10 out of 11 or 91% of the collected amount. Now who introduced? Lord Cornwallis and John Shore. Where it was introduced? Bengal, Bihar, Orissa, parts of Tamil Nadu and Benares. 19% of British India. Now if you look at the consequences, let me quickly discuss about the consequences of this, which is again very important when it comes to mains. Okay, see the taxation, although it was fixed on the basis of 1790, that in itself was very high. You have to pay around 60% of the produce as the tax, and remember that involves your cost price, the price of sowing, the seeds and fertilizers, etc. all are included. Okay, so when it comes to all those things, you are paying around 80 to 85% as tax itself. Okay, so you are left out with nothing. So that is one of the most important problem. The taxation was very high. So most of the time you will not be able to pay tax. In case if there is a crop failure or if there is any issue, climate related issue, you will not be able to pay tax. But you don't want to lose your land. So what will happen is you will approach some people for getting money and you will borrow money. So some sections of people have seen this as a great opportunity to lend money to the subtenants or sharecroppers for a very high interest rate. Okay, so you can see a group of money lenders emerged. Money lenders or mahajans emerged during this time, and they charge very high rate of interest. Now what happened is, again they will not be able to pay interest also. So the next year whatever they cultivate, they may have to pay to the money lender. So you will not be able to pay the tax again in the next year. So definitely you will lose your land. Okay, so you will lose your land. Okay, so you lose your land, and what will happen? This land will be given to the new peasant. So automatically you become a rural landless labor. You become a rural landless labor. So earlier, let's suppose 5 people are working in this much amount of land. Now a lot of such new rural landless laborers emerge. So this 5 become 10. So the productivity will reduce. You can call it as unemployment or underemployment or disguised unemployment. All these situations will emerge, and that will lead to poverty deprivation on one side. Okay, so this is happening due to the eviction of the peasant. Now if you look at the other scenario where there is a possibility of eviction of zamindar is also there if he is not paying the tax, right, under sunset law. So see, there is a possibility like this. If the zamindar is not paying tax, the zamindar will be evicted. Okay, so if zamindar versus state, who is the owner? State is the owner. So if he is evicted, what happens? New zamindar will come. So old zamindar may be from rural area, he may be knowing the land equation, so he is completely aware about the land structure and everything. But the new person who is coming may be looking after the 9% commission that you are getting. He may be an urban merchant, he may not have any relation to the rural area. Okay, so he will take up the zamindariship for the 9% commission that you'll get. Okay, so what will happen is he will not be there in the area most of the time. This lead to a situation what we call as absentee landlordism. Okay, so absentee landlordism is a specific or typical feature of zamindari settlement or permanent settlement. Very, very important point. The other points that we have discussed, all these are common in all settlements, but absentee landlordism is very specific to zamindari settlement. Now what will happen? This person, he may be very busy person, so he will appoint some other person to collect tax. He is not in his land. Okay, so he will appoint some other person, we can call it as zamindar too. So this lead to, he will say that out of the 9 I'll keep 5 and I'll give you 4. Then this person may appoint another person by giving, I keep 2, you take 2. This person may appoint another person by telling that I'll keep 1 and you will keep 1. This person may appoint another person by saying that I keep 0.5. Okay, you keep 0.5. So out of 100 rupee, this person is going to get 0.5, means 50 paisa. And that will be very, very cheap. Okay, so what he will do is, he will charge more and more from the peasant. See, let's take a hypothetical case. Okay, so the peasant is getting 2000 from the production. Okay, and you are supposed to pay 1000 rupees as the tax. 1000 rupees as the tax. So 1000 is there with us, the peasant. Okay, next year, so this is the first year. Second year also, there is an increase in this one, that is increased to 4000. How much you need to pay as tax? 1000 you need to pay as tax. But what the zamindar will do is, they will not only collect this 1000, they will also charge some more. They may collect 2000 extra. So he is not getting any profit even though the production is increased, right? So this 2000, they don't want to pay to the state because this is fixed as 1000 and you will pay 910 because 91% and you will keep 90 rupee. Okay, that's what you are asked to keep, 9%. So you are supposed to take only 90, but how much you are effectively getting? 2090. What the state is getting? 910 only. Neither the state nor the peasant is getting the benefit even if there is an increase in production. It's a zamindar or the intermediary who is getting the advantage. So you can see another impact as a lot of exploitation by the zamindars. Exploitation. Okay, now next point you can see a lot of intermediaries. Okay, chain of intermediaries. That is also a specific problem with respect to permanent settlement. So chain of intermediaries. These are the impact that you need to write. Okay, so you can write high rate of taxation that led the peasant were not able to pay the tax and money lenders emerged. So they charge very high rate of interest. That led to these people becoming very poor and poverty. So they sell their land or they leave the land, they lose their land, they become rural landless labor. That will create a situation of unemployment or underemployment or disguised unemployment that lead to poverty, that lead to deprivation. Okay, all these issues you can write. You can also write this situation: absentee landlordism, exploitation by the zamindar, chain of intermediaries. And out of this, these two are very important because these two are very specific feature of permanent settlement that you cannot see in other settlements. But everything else that we have discussed, all these consequences you can see in permanent settlement, Mahalwari settlement and in Riotwari settlement also. But this too is very, very specific. So I hope all of you understood this much. What we'll do is we'll discuss the Riotwari and Mahalwari in a separate heading where I will also discuss quickly again about permanent settlement, okay, as land revenue settlement.